Hi there, I'm Renos Vakis, lead economist at the World Bank, and your host for Accelerating Development Ideas for Impact. This is not your typical podcast. It's an AI powered conversation brought to you by the World Bank Institute for Economic Development, where we unpack the latest research with one goal in mind, turning big ideas into real world impact. Let's get started.
Thank you for the introduction, Renos. Let me start with a simple question. What would your career look like if the law quietly limited where you could work, how you could travel, or whether you could access credit? For millions of women, that's not hypothetical. So, yes, building inclusive economies matters. But the real story is whether the rules of the game actually allow half the population to participate fully.
Exactly, because right now the global economy is trying to run a marathon while hopping on one leg.
That is a vivid image, and it brings us to the report we're discussing today, Women, Business, and the Law 2026. It's a data-rich World Bank Group report covering 190 economies. And the central argument seems to be that no economy can run at full strength while half its people live at half their potential.
That is the core issue. Women are half the world's population, but when you look at the labor force, only 58% of women on average participate in the labor force compared with 76% of men. And the gap widens as they move up in their careers. The World Bank Enterprise Survey states that women hold just 19% of top management roles globally, and only 34% of firms are owned by women.
That gap is huge, and I imagine that isn't just a social issue, it has to be an economic one.
It is an economic imperative. If we closed gender gaps in employment, we could raise long-term GDP per capita by an average of 20% globally.
20%? That's staggering. So, if the economic incentive is that clear, why are we still seeing these gaps? I assumed laws were getting better.
Laws are improving, but legal equality remains out of reach for almost every woman. In fact, only 4% of women globally live in countries close to full legal equality. None of the 190 economies grant women the complete set of rights measured by this report.
Not one?
Not one. And the consequences are visible in political leadership. According to UN Women's statistics, women account for only 27% of parliamentarians globally and just 23% of cabinet ministers. That means many of the most consequential economic and policy decisions are still shaped without women fully represented at the table.
So, even where laws improve on paper, women still aren't fully present in the rooms where those laws are debated.
Yes, and it is not just about the laws on the paper. This report measures the supportive frameworks that put laws into action and the extent to which they are enforced. It looks at the difference between what the law says and what actually happens in reality.
That connects the dots for me, because you can pass a law, but if nobody follows it, it's just paper.
Precisely. On paper, the global average score for legal frameworks is 67 out of 100. That means women enjoy only 2/3 of the legal rights of men. But when you look at supportive frameworks, the policies and institutions needed to implement those laws, the score drops to 47.
So, we have the laws, but we don't have the systems to back them up.
We lack the data systems, the budget, and the institutions. And it gets worse when you look at enforcement. Experts report that laws are only enforced half of the time. So you have a gap between the promise of the law and the lived reality of the woman.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Where are these gaps the worst? Because the report mentions some foundational issues like safety.
Safety from violence is the lowest scoring topics globally. And this is critical because if a woman is not safe from violence, she cannot work, she cannot build a business, she cannot participate fully in the economy.
Right. It's hard to hold down a job if you aren't safe in your own home or on your commute.
Exactly. And the data shows that women enjoy barely a third of the necessary legal protections needed to safeguard them from domestic violence or sexual harassment. But here is the shocking part. Even where laws exist, enforcement is ineffective roughly 80% of the time.
80%. So, in most cases, the law is there, but it's not protecting anyone.
This is a major failure of implementation, and we see a similar pattern in childcare. This is a major weak spot during a woman's most productive years.
I saw that in the outline. It mentioned that in some places, childcare is completely unregulated.
Yes, In 44 economies, childcare services for children under the age of 3 remain completely unregulated. And in low-income economies, only about 1% of the necessary supportive mechanisms like quality standards or financial support are in place.
1%. So if you're a mother in a low-income economy, you are basically on your own. You either stay home or you leave your child in a situation that might not be safe or educational. But thinking from another angle, this is not just a childcare issue, right? It's also a jobs issue.
Excellent point. Without accessible and affordable childcare, mothers are pushed out of the workforce or forced into lower-paying or informal jobs.
And for the women who do manage to work or maybe try to start their own business, I guess they run into barriers there too.
They do. Entrepreneurship is another area with invisible walls. In 91 economies, laws do not prohibit gender-based discrimination in access to credit.
And that really brings the issue into focus because when women face barriers to credit, it doesn't just affect individual businesses, it shapes who can participate in the economy at all. It may feel a bit gloomy here, but the report also talks about demographics in a way that feels urgent, like we're on a deadline.
We are. Over the next decade, 1.2 billion young people will enter the workforce. Half of them are female. The regions where this youth population is growing the fastest, like Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East, have the most restrictive legal barriers.
So you have this massive wave of talent coming, but the doors are locked.
But here is where this gets interesting. Sub-Saharan Africa has some of the lowest scores, yes, but it is also the world's most active reformer.
Really? So they're recognizing the problem.
They are acting on it. Between October 2023 and October 2025, 68 economies enacted 113 reforms, and the top reformers include countries like Egypt, Madagascar, Somalia, Oman, Jordan, and Kyrgyz Republic.
Can you give us an example of what those reforms look like on the ground?
Take Somalia. They enacted a new labor code. It lifted long-standing restrictions on women working in mining, energy, and agriculture. It opens up entire sectors. Or look at Egypt. They removed restrictions on women working at night and in so-called dangerous jobs.
That is great. And it seems like these reforms will open up ways for women to access higher paying jobs, right?
That is correct. But reforms didn't stop there. Egypt, Madagascar, and Somalia also introduced paid paternity leave for the first time.
That is such great news, because at the end of the day, equality is not just a woman's issue, right?
Correct. Reforms are increasingly recognizing the importance of men's role in caregiving, and that's such an important cultural shift.
You're right. If men can take leave, it stops being a woman's issue and becomes a family issue.
Yes, that is a start. But globally, only 38 economies actually incentivize fathers to take paternity leave. We still have a long way to go to normalize shared care.
So, looking at the big picture here, Women Business in the Law 2026 is acting like a mirror. It shows us the gaps, but it's also a map.
It is a map for action. The message to policymakers is clear. First, close the legal gaps. Don't lose the reform momentum. Just get started. Second, and this is crucial, invest in implementation. You need the institutions and the data to make the laws real.
It sounds like we need to move from passing laws to making laws work.
Exactly. Focus on the enablers, safety and childcare. Because when equality grows, businesses are stronger. As we mentioned, in many countries, removing these barriers could raise economic output by 15 to 20%. It is not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. Over to you, Renos.
Thank you for joining us. You can find the full report on our website. Just follow the link in the description. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know about upcoming episodes. And before you go, how do you plan to put what you learn into practice? And what topics you'd like us to explore next? We'd love to know. Until then, goodbye.